Who are some of the criminals we had no clue about? Let's find out, starting with number 5. 40 years of hiding. America's most wanted fugitive, Donald Santini, was finally caught by the police after roughly 40 years on the run. Santini's criminal career stemmed back to the 1970s when he served jail time for a crime he committed in Germany while he was in the army. He was also charged with robbery in Texas. In 1984, authorities believed he completed a hit on Cynthia Ruth Wood, a mother who was in the middle of a custody battle. He evaded capture for the next 40 years by adopting various aliases and traveling the country. Although he had a wife and child in Texas, he fled to California to start a new life. Santini changed his name to Wellman Simmons and worked at various jobs, including apartment manager, running an antique store, and serving as president on a water board. He married another woman, and the pair had several children. Santini opened a Thai restaurant with his second wife in La Mesa, and while he appeared to be a wealthy businessman, the fugitive was in a lot of debt. He owed one guy $24,000 for giving him a personal loan for his restaurant. When Santini worked as an apartment manager, a former tenant sued him for over $91,000. The tenant had moved into the building, and Santini agreed to pay him $25 an hour for some work. They arranged for Santini to forward the guy his checks to cover his rent, but Santini just kept the money instead. Eventually, the property company that Santini worked for evicted the tenant for unpaid rent, prompting the lawsuit. Before long, Wellman Simmons owed dozens of people hundreds of thousands of dollars and declared bankruptcy 3 times. In a 2004 filing, he listed over $161,000 in liabilities and included a long list of his debts, including $10,000 owed to the San Diego Union Tribune newspaper and an undisclosed amount owed to American Express. In 2018, Santini was even on TV being interviewed by ABC San Diego after 2 people who lived in an apartment building that he managed had passed away. Law enforcement eventually tracked Simmons down when he applied for a passport renewal. His daughter, Whitney Simmons, had no clue about her father's double life. When she discovered that U.S. Marshals arrested him in relation to Cynthia Ruth Woods' passing, Whitney was certain someone had set him up. She thought that his other children were angry with him and decided to inform the FBI about her father's whereabouts. A week after Santini's arrest, Whitney's brother and sister put her family home on the market and sold their father's belongings. Whitney challenged the evidence against her father regarding Woods' case and insisted that the husband set it up. In court, he admitted to being Donald Santini, not Wellman Simmons, despite living under that name for 2 decades. After almost 40 years on the run, Donald Santini is set to live out the rest of his days behind bars with a 50-year prison sentence after pleading guilty. It makes you wonder, how does he feel about it? The guy lived a pretty full life on the run, but also had to live with the knowledge of the crime he committed. What do you think? Is he finally at peace now that he's been caught and sentenced? Or was this guy a total psychopath that's mad he got caught? Tell us in the comments below. Number 4. Uber cheats. Brittany Narbett used a friend's credit card details to order thousands of dollars of food deliveries. The fraud started when the victim let Narbett use his debit card to make an UberEats delivery. Narbett saved his details and for the next year and a half used them to order 211 meals and averaged 12 deliveries a month. Narbett mainly ordered McDonald's, although sometimes treated herself to meals from places like Pizza Hut, Subway, and several other local restaurants. Somehow, the friend didn't notice the UberEats charges to his bank account until a mutual friend discovered what had happened and let the victim know. He realized Narbett stole $7,300 to pay for her food deliveries and contacted the police. Narbett pleaded guilty to 14 counts of fraud by false representation and expressed her regret for what she did. She also alluded to the fact that it wasn't just her involvement in the scam, but said she didn't want to put herself or her children through more stress. The judge sentenced Narbett to a 12-month mental health treatment program and ordered her to repay all the money she stole from the victim. Make sure you avoid situations like this by remembering to have alerts switched on for every purchase made using your debit or credit card. And obviously, don't save your payment details on someone else's phone. Number 3. Hollywooding. Ann Dunlop conned her family out of $43,000 in a bogus Hollywood actress fraud. Dunlop, who lived with her husband and an unnamed female roommate, told family members that her roommate was about to have her big break in Hollywood and was being lined up for some million-dollar contracts. She claimed that the future star's manager was U.S. entertainment executive Irving Azoff, and that the woman was mingling with A-listers such as Beyoncé and Leonardo DiCaprio. Dunlop convinced her brother, David Bunton, that the roommate needed cash to tide her over until the money from her Hollywood contracts arrived. David was a former life science company CEO who sold his business for some pretty good money and gave her a loan, and also targeted her sister Jean and brother-in-law Steve Allen, who thought that Dunlop and her roommate had champagne on tap at their fancy London residence. Although Anne's roommate was bound to be a star, Anne asked Jean and Steve to help pay her bills because she just didn't have the money. After learning that Irving Azoff was representing the actress, David handed the pair $6,100 to help build her career. The two women also mentioned working on movies with Michael Keaton and Quentin Tarantino. The alleged actress said she went to the Oscars to network and had met Leonardo DiCaprio while working on a marketing campaign for Chanel, and also told her family that the woman was going to star in the movie version of Wicked, directed by Tim Burton. David didn't know the exact figure that the fraudster would earn for the movie, but believed it would be millions of dollars. So, being a good brother, he loaned Dunlop $33,000 when he learned she and her husband were struggling to make ends meet. David also covered at least one of their utility bills. Then, months passed, and nothing was even attempted to be repaid. The woman was supposed to appear in the Chanel Christmas commercial, but when it aired, David noticed that she wasn't in it. So naturally, he grew suspicious of his sister and her friend and hired a private investigator to keep an eye on the woman. He wanted to know if the alleged soon-to-be star was actually represented by Azoff, or if his sister had lied to him. David and Alan were under the impression Anne and the woman lived a movie star lifestyle in London. When they visited Anne's place for her birthday party, there was an endless supply of champagne. The two men also noticed that the woman liked to shop at Harrods, an expensive luxury department store, and had designer handbags. While living extravagantly, the women turned to Alan for help covering Dunlop's $730 gas bill that she said she couldn't afford. Dunlop said she would repay Alan in 2 weeks, as she had a large sum of money in her bank account, but it wasn't available immediately because it was tied up in an investment fund. She also told her family members that Tim Burton collected her roommate's debit and credit cards and put them in a safe, which is such a weird thing to say Tim Burton did with no explanation, and was eventually found guilty of defrauding her family out of $43,000. She said in court that she really believed the actress had starred in the movie she told her family about. She added that she asked her family for money when her husband got sick and stopped working. Anne also mentioned that the woman was going to appear on a U.S. TV show and had already filmed an episode for it. Dunlop and her accomplice agreed to pay David and Alan all of the money they took. People never expect their own siblings to scam them, unless your sibling is Logan Paul. Number 2. Breaking Bad, the math version. Math teacher Jeffrey Scott Blake kept a host of illegal substances and related paraphernalia in his RV. He had worked for Citrus County School District in Florida since 2001. Law enforcement first discovered a glass pipe in Blake's pocket that had traces of illegal substances and discovered 3 clear plastic bags inside 2 eyeglass cases which contained multiple illegal substances. They executed 2 search warrants at the veteran teacher's home where they discovered large quantities of illegal substances and items associated with selling those illegal things. Authorities arrested Blake, holding him on a $21,000 bond. Although all school district employees had to go through FBI Level 2 background checking, Blake's illegal activities were undetected. Blake faced multiple charges related to his selling. The school district conducted a separate investigation to determine the future of Blake's employment, which is just words because how on earth would this guy ever keep his job? Several of his former students came forward to say that they knew something was up with him. They described him as hyper and sometimes skittish. Maybe combining his illegal activities in his personal life with being a math teacher was a bad decision. In addition to his charges, Blake was arrested again for the worst type of illegal pictures you can imagine on his electronic devices. He faced 75 years in prison. However, there wasn't public information as of the release of this video in regards to the outcome of his case. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned for our past release to find out how Kevin Kevin Hart had no clue his personal assistant was stealing from him. Number 1. Grandma embezzles $200,000. Patricia Bennett stole $200,000 from her employer to pay for vacations and a DIY pop-up bar in the back of her refurbished backyard. The grandmother worked as an account manager at J. Shaw Electrical Engineers for almost 25 years. She started with the firm in 1998 and was responsible for invoicing, balancing accounts, paying wages and suppliers, and looking after employees' retirement funds. Her boss was David Whitehead, the managing director of the organization. Throughout her employment, Whitehead always felt he could trust Bennett. When she retired, a new account manager took her place and noticed a bunch of discrepancies in the company's accounts. The new employee realized that some suppliers were paid twice, but when she contacted those companies, she discovered they only received payment once. Whitehead discovered that the extra payments were dispersed between 2 accounts under Bennett's name and 1 in her husband's name. During an investigation, Whitehead and his team learned that Bennett created profiles for companies that J. Shaw Electrical Engineers worked with, but used her own account numbers for payments. The small payments made it easy for the transactions to go unnoticed. Bennett began stealing in 2008 and openly treated herself to vacations on her RV and trips to Spain. As investigators searched for the whereabouts of the missing money, they turned to her social media accounts where she had shared multiple pictures of her vacations in the UK, Spain, and Greece. Bennett also posted images of the elaborate bar she built in her backyard. Bennett's days of enjoying her lavish lifestyle were cut short when she was arrested and charged with fraud. Bennett's lawyer said that she had originally taken money from her employer as her husband was sick and money was tight. Not excusable, but understandable. But when nobody noticed the extra charges to the company's accounts, she couldn't resist the temptation to keep stealing. Whitehead admitted that if he'd known that Bennett was struggling, the company would have found a way to help her. They were a small, family-owned business and felt extremely betrayed, especially since she had access to the accounts of Whitehead's brother, father, and grandfather. Bennett was sentenced to 18 months in jail and formally apologized to her former employer. But Bennett loved to brag on social media about all of her vacations and refurbished backyard. So do you think she was truly sorry, or just sorry she got caught? She wanted to help her expat friends in Dubai by helping them send money to their foreign bank accounts. But instead, she just kept the money. But she probably isn't the worst person to find to help you. That person may just be Gilbert Arenas' assistant who stole close to $7 million from him. The same thing happened to Kevin Hart. His personal assistant stole close to $1 million from him. Number 4. No laughing matter. Crime can happen to anyone. And that's what happened to Kevin Hart. From 2017 to 2019, Kevin Hart was defrauded out of nearly $1 million in unauthorized credit card charges. Crime can happen to anyone. And that's what happened to Kevin Hart. From 2017 to 2019, Kevin Hart was defrauded out of nearly $1 million in unauthorized credit card charges. The scammer was none other than Hart's personal shopper, Dylan Jason Sire, who is trusted with Hart's personal credit card to make purchases. Sire, a Long Island native, owned a personal shopper business in which he charged the actor's credit card with legitimate purchases, but the things he bought weren't always what Hart had in mind. Sire spent about $923,000 of Hart's money and an additional $240,000 on jewelry and watches from a luxury jeweler in California. He spent thousands on fine art and other collective items, including 5 Patek Philippe watches worth more than $400,000. He bought a Sam Friedman painting, 16 Bear Brick collector dolls, 5 KAWS collectible dolls, and 2 Louis Vuitton bags. He showed off many of these purchases on his personal Instagram page. Sire and Hart met in 2015 through his personal shopping business, Sire Consulting, LLC. He was hired to make several purchases for the actor and was given his personal credit card under the assumption that he would only make authorized purchases. By the time Hart uncovered the year-and-a-half-long scam, he was out more than $1 million. The cops kicked in his door to serve a search warrant in February 2021. They recovered about $250,000 worth of cash and goods. Sire was arraigned and charged with a laundry list of fraud and theft charges and potentially faces up to 25 years in prison. The Queens County District Attorney warned that no one, not even celebrities like Kevin Hart, are immune to scams. Number 3. Almost a Hilton. Renata Shamrakova, the personal assistant to Nikki Hilton's ex-husband, spent nearly $1.6 million of his money on elite Amex on shopping sprees and exotic vacations. She conned Todd Meister while she worked for him at his Upper East Side townhouse in Manhattan. Neighbors started noticing piles of packages showing up at Renata's door. They were later discovered to contain high-end jewelry with expensive rings, necklaces, and bracelets. She also used his credit card to purchase airline tickets and fund her travel abroad. She covered her tracks by paying off the $800,000 credit card bill using Meister's J.P. Morgan checking account and transferring the funds to American Express. At the heart of the story, we have Nikki Hilton, Todd Meister, and of course, Renata Shamrakova. Nikki Hilton is an American businesswoman, socialite, model, and fashion designer, but she's probably most known for being Paris Hilton's younger sister and fellow heir to the Hilton family fortune. Born into the wealthy Hilton family, she continued her streak of inherited wealth by marrying into the Rothschild family through James Rothschild in 2015. Paris was Nikki's maid of honor, and they honeymooned in Botswana after the wedding. Before that, Nikki married Todd Meister. He was a football star at the uppity Riverdale Country School before going on to Harvard to get a degree in business. Then, Todd started a company in the mid-90s dedicated to investing in internet startups. He sold the company in 2000 and started working as a hedge fund manager while still finding time to party. Meister was Nikki's longtime friend before they started dating on and off in 2003. Nikki was just a kid when she married Meister, but he treated her like gold and they had great chemistry. Her parents were thrilled about the wedding. The ceremony was held in August 2004 at a Las Vegas wedding chapel. Nikki wore an aqua blue silk dress and Meister donned a button-down shirt and pants. Paris witnessed the vows along with Bijou Phillips and comedian Jeff Beecher. But not everyone was convinced it would last. Meister's friends guessed it was a publicity stunt that would get annulled 3 days later. Unfortunately for the couple, he wasn't so far from the truth. The marriage was annulled 3 months later, with the couple saying they got married on a whim. According to friends of the couple, they tried to give their marriage a fair shot, but it just wasn't meant to be. But while he was distracted being the newest member of the Hilton family, his personal assistant was stealing his Amex. Renata used his banking information to apply for an American Express credit card in his name and then added herself as a secondary user. In April 2011, the Ukrainian woman got too comfortable with her new boss and went on a wild spending spree. She sent the items to her apartment in Chelsea on 21st Street. Many of the purchases included pricey jewelry and exotic vacations. By the time her swindling days were over, she had stolen nearly $1 million from Meister. Unfortunately, Meister didn't notice the stolen funds for 10 months. He notified police in January 2012, and Renata was arrested 4 days later. She was charged with grand larceny, criminal possession of stolen property, identity theft, and forgery, and held on Rikers Island for a $100,000 bond. Her parents even tried to sell their home to help their daughter avoid jail. Renata also started a social media campaign to pay back the money she owed to Meister, but it was less than successful, raising a grand total of $335. She took the stand at the Manhattan Supreme Court in December 2013, where she pleaded guilty to felony grand larceny. She was sentenced up to 3 years behind bars. The defense team requested that she stay at Rikers Island, but the judge denied this motion and sent her to a prison in upstate New York. Number 2. Play money. Ex-NBA star Gilbert Arenas found out of the blue that his trusted personal assistant, John A. White, scammed him out of roughly $7 million in Arenas' estimation. However, on court docs, Arenas could only prove around $2.1 million. Arenas only found out when he started noticing discrepancies in one of his bank accounts where he would have what he called a play money bank account. White had given himself unauthorized access to this specific play money bank account that Arenas used basically as a petty cash account. Whenever Gilbert needed, for example, $20,000 for a weekend trip to Miami, Arenas would have White call up Arenas' money manager and have him transfer the money to Gilbert's play money bank account. Then the money would be be in there for Arenas to use. But White went on and abused this power by telling Arenas' money manager that Arenas would need money for a made-up purchase. And as soon as that money would touch the Play Money account, White would transfer that money into his own bank account. So Arenas would never see the discrepancy in the balance, and the money manager would never follow up with Arenas since White was his personal assistant. At the height of Arenas' career, Arenas' assistant was stealing millions of dollars by transferring money from Arenas' bank account into his own. He spent the money on a home in Florida, a Ferrari, and a Range Rover. White was found guilty and sentenced to 57 months in federal prison and 2 years of supervised release. The judge banned him from opening or using any credit cards without his probation officer's permission. White asked for a retrial when new evidence emerged that could change his guilty conviction. Many witnesses came forward with statements that Arenas was aware of the big transactions White was making on his behalf. White also found signed forms from the bank showing that Arenas was fully aware of these transactions. People close to Arenas came forward to say that the NBA star was known to spend carelessly, like when he bought a home for one of his girlfriends in Florida. The scammer accused Arenas of lying when he said White wasn't authorized to make these big purchases. Then there are Arenas' Instagram posts that seem to brag about defrauding American Express by not paying his tab at a gentleman's club. Still, the judge wasn't convinced. He rejected White's request for a retrial, saying this new evidence didn't suggest innocence and wasn't relevant to the criminal case. Number 1. Forex Fun. Katie Blaymeyer moved to the United Arab Emirates in 2011 to start working as a physical education teacher at an international school where she taught a British curriculum. She was born and raised in Lancashire, England, but moved after her mother died in 2008. When her 5-year contract ended at the international school in UAE, Blaymeyer started doing private swimming lessons for the children of wealthy locals in their personal pools. Then, she got a Facebook message that invited her into a life of crime. Someone asked her if she was looking for work, hoping she would be able to swap their Emirati dirhams for another currency at a better rate than what the banks offer. At first, it didn't seem to be a problem. Blaymeyer, a staple in the Dubai party scene, did these currency exchanges for a while. A driver picked up the sender's money and brought it to Blaymeyer. Then she'd exchange it for cash in her British bank account. She offered reasonable rates, and there weren't any problems until things snowballed and went totally wrong. During the pandemic, she saw the opportunity to rip off many expats, especially Emirates airline crew members and pilots who had been laid off and were desperate for better exchange rates. She used fake names like Imogen Smith and Don Smith to lure them in. Her clients thought she was genuine until they realized their money wasn't being returned. One businessman, Mr. Osman, said he lost £42,000 to Blaymeyer after using her services to expand his kebab business. She told him she was pregnant and wanted to get rid of her dirhams so she could return to her husband in the UK. A win-win for them both. But then she disappeared. Osman spent 2 stressful, sleepless weeks trying to get in touch with her. When he confided in some friends, they told him that Blaymeyer had a reputation for scams. An Australian air hostess lost £6,500 after trying to send money back home to put a deposit down on a house. A Spanish pilot said he lost £22,000 trying to send money home to pay for his father's funeral. He saw Blaymeyer's posts in an airline Facebook group and assumed she worked in the industry. He trusted her. The deal was supposed to save him £250 in bank fees, but the money never arrived in his account in Madrid. Blaymeyer met his wife and kids and was friendly to the whole family. The pilot never knew she was capable of such heartlessness. She also scammed a British pilot out of £50,000, a Belgian cabin crew member out of £20,000, and a French airline worker out of £18,000. WhatsApp messages show the dozens of excuses she used to explain why the victims never received their money. A Dubai resident sent her £28,000 as an investor to develop a food ordering app. Blaymeyer spent £2,000 on software development but never developed the app. The investors never saw his money. When victims tried to get their money back, Blaymeyer threatened them. She wasn't allowed to leave Lancashire until she paid back the debts owed to her swimming class business partner Alex Campbell, who took her to court after he invested £15,000 in her company, Float UAE, in exchange for a job. When Campbell tried to cash a security check for his investment, it bounced. At least 20 people filed complaints with the police, and Blaymeyer was arrested and jailed on Christmas Eve 2019. After a civil court case, a travel ban was placed, preventing Blaymeyer from leaving Dubai. The court instated a repayment plan and put her on the no-fly list. She was released from jail after repaying the debt that caused a previous check to bounce. Meanwhile, she blamed multiple people up the chain of command for all the money that had mysteriously vanished and denied that she was operating a scam. She said she used 100,000 pounds of her personal savings to repay some victims, leaving 8 victims who owed a total of 80,000 pounds. According to Blameyer, she's the real victim here, saying she's been blackmailed and received death threats. Sometimes she even blamed the bank for the mix-ups that caused her to serve jail time. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section what you'd rather do. Go to prison for 3 years or be on the run for the rest of your life, and if you're caught, have to serve 20 years.